Hi guys, welcome to my video. My name is Katie and I'm going to be walking you through a process video of my first Drawtober. Drawtober is a drawing challenge. It's just like Inktober or Drawloween. It takes place during the month of October, obviously from the name, and you're given a prompt list, and there's tons of different prompts by tons of different people, but this year I'm going to be following the original Drawtober prompt list, which I will link below. And for the first few days, you are given a prompt and you have to follow that, and then you upload it to social media with a certain hashtag. For the first few days, this prompt was the witch's garden, and so I'm drawing a witch in her garden. I knew from the beginning that I really wanted this to be more of a fruit and vegetable garden rather than an herb garden or a flower garden, and so I wanted to try to capture that. She's working hard, she's getting sustenance from her garden, you know, she's making a living out there. So I really like this character. I really like how she turned out. She seems like she has a lot of personality. I'm fully aware that actual gardens that are fruit and vegetable gardens don't usually have this layout. They usually are in straight rows. They don't have a curve through their path, but I really liked the layout of the path, and so I really wanted to keep that and just kind of pretend that that's how fruit and vegetable gardens are usually laid out. So let's pretend. Let's pretend. I'm going to start drawing it later on, but I did have a little bit of trouble working on this background just because they're really not my forte. I'm not really good at backgrounds, I'm not really good at composition, and so that's something I really wanted to try to focus on for this challenge specifically. I think it's a really good way for me to slowly work on some things that I'd like to get better in my work. So yeah, I wanted this to be a full composition, and I wanted to focus on limiting my color palette and making it appropriate for the situation. And that meant, you know, getting my lighting right for the time of day, and that meant, you know, considering what else around it relatively affects that color. So it was a little bit of a challenge, but I think in the end I tweak it a little bit and it ends up working out really well, at least better than what I had hoped. So I'm very excited about it. So as I said, I'm not very good at backgrounds because I don't really paint them a lot, I don't really draw them a lot, but I think this was a really good introduction into that. You'll also see that I'm going to be using my sketch layer as my final line work layer. This is something I decided on early on, I think. The sketch layer started to end up looking really nice, and I really liked how the lines were looking. And I think when I personally am drawing something and I go to line it, I lose something. It gets a little stiff. I know this is something common with other artists as well. They kind of lose this like loose, really expressive factor whenever they go and try to line things perfectly. And I'm definitely one of those people. I love for my lines to look absolutely perfect and have the specific weights that I want them to have, and there's nothing wrong with that. There really isn't, but I personally just want to start working on getting my lines a little more expressive, not necessarily drawing the entire line. You know, you can use things like implied line work, where, you know, you don't necessarily finish drawing the entire circle, but your eye knows that that's supposed to be a circle, and so it automatically fills it in. So that was a little confusing, but anyway, long story short, I'm just really trying to work on the expressiveness in my lines and kind of striking that balance between finished line work and expressiveness. And now I'm drawing some pumpkins. I really like drawing these pumpkins. I know they're just like a bunch of different little ovals, but they're always so fun to draw. I really like drawing them. They're just fun. they got to be a little bit hard to color in later, just because, you know, pumpkins are inherently, well, not inherently, but the majority of the time pumpkins are orange, and I think I struggled to find a way to color that with shading, because I wanted my shading to be purple, to have this sort of dusk, kind of late night, sun setting time of day, and it kind of made the colors look a little muddy. I play around with it later on, and maybe it helped a little bit. I think it did, but I think it ended up being okay in the end. I did struggle with that though. And then off to the side, I'm drawing her little cottage. She has a nice little cottage. I think it'd be really sweet to see the inside of that one day. But she also has some bushes over here to the side. I think originally I wanted them to be berry bushes with all of those dots being fruits. And somewhere along the way, this got so messed up. I have no idea what happened to this poor little bush. I do tweak it throughout the entire drawing. I'm just never really fully happy with it. I think adding in those very specific lines for the leaves maybe didn't help. I think it hindered me actually a little bit. But yeah, you'll see me go back in and edit that a lot. Now I'm starting to get into the color palette. I already knew in my head what colors I wanted her to be. I wanted to have this dark complexion, but with light hair. I thought that would be a really fun contrast and something I hadn't really ever done before. So I laid down a initial layer, an initial color, just so I can see what I'm working with, and then I use clipping masks on top of all of those. And usually I go pretty conservative or pretty light with my initial base color, just because when I start to add in shading and blushing is so much fun. Oh my gosh, I love adding the blushes and all of the details to the face. But when I do that, when I start into that process, it typically darkens things up a little bit, so I tend to go lighter on my base coat. And I thought a lot about what I wanted her to wear. I went through a lot of initial sketches, but I ended up on this kind of historically inspired, light shirt that kind of reminds me of things you see in period dramas, and it's kind of like a pirate shirt. I don't know, that's just what I think of when I see it, is she's a pirate. It's a pirate shirt. So that was fun to draw. I really like the big sleeves and then how it cinches in at her wrists. And then her dress, I actually wanted this to be sort of like an overall denim dress, because she's out working and she's pulling her vegetables, and she doesn't want to get her beautiful pirate shirt all dirty, so she wears these overalls. And I thought about embroidering maybe some things on it, doing these little doodles to see if I could add some more detail, but in the end I thought it was better if it was left a little plain. Maybe she wouldn't wear something that's embroidered out into the field when she's working. She wants to keep her nice things nice, and she isn't going to wear something nice with very beautiful embroidery out in the field. So I don't know, just working through that thought process. Now I'm adding some burn and dodge tools to the hair. I really like to do this little step to sort of add dimension. And now I'm going in with some browns to kind of darken up some potential roots that she would have, or do a little bit of shading. This is when the colors started to come together a little bit better, I feel like. And typically when I shade and I blush the skin, I like to do the nose and the cheeks. I do the chin, the top of the ears, and a little bit of the forehead, not a lot, just a little bit, just enough to give them some sun exposure. Then I like to do the knuckles and the fingertips and the tips of the knees. So any kind of extremity, usually if her elbows were showing, I would give some blush to her elbows. I really like adding blush to the shoulders for almost a little bit of a sunburnt look. I kind of really like the sunburnt look. I don't know. I think it's cute. I don't know. It's a lot of fun. Something that was really challenging with all of the sort of brown hues in this was to find a balance to where they weren't blending together. Her skin and the dirt of the ground and the basket that's beside her and the cottage in the background, I just wanted them to have their own separate shade of brown, and that was really hard for me to try to differentiate. I also struggled with coloring those flowers in the back. Those were very hard to figure out without going in and doing each individual little dot, which I end up doing later. I end up doing it because I could never figure out what to do. You're going to see me adjusting the colors throughout this piece a lot. Here I am coloring the pumpkins now, like I was saying earlier. They do get a little muddy, but I think they turned out really nice in the end. I think the pumpkins are one of my favorite parts about this. I really love the way that they turned out. Initially, when I was sketching her, I was thinking that she was pulling carrots, but I think along the way that changed. They're not quite carrots anymore. If you look at the way that carrots look when they're peeking out from the ground, this is not how they look. But I'll get to that in a little bit. I think at this point, at this stage, in those bushes to the left, this is probably where they looked their best. And I should have stopped messing with them. I should have left them alone. But I do go in and I do a clipping mask on their line work, and I make that less graphic. And I think that kind of hindered it a little bit. That shouldn't have happened. I should have left that alone. Here I'm adding an overlay. I like to do one layer and set the layer style to overlay and do usually a really desaturated, slightly darker color, just so I can, that's my way of color balancing a little bit better, I think. It kind of sets one tone over the entire illustration, and it kind of brings the colors together to a more cohesive palette. Yeah. So I really like to do that. Every now and then I do forget. And I notice it. I really do. I think when I forget to include the overlay layer in some of my illustrations, it's really noticeable. And so I really try to remember to do that. Also, an apology for this voiceover because I am recovering from a cold, so I probably sound very sick right now, and it's because I am. But thank you guys for listening and for dealing with it. I appreciate it. And now I'm going in and just adding some rim lighting. This is something I'm fairly new to. I really wanted to try to capture that sort of dusk, the sun is just peeking out over the edges of the hills kind of look, and I think I got it pretty well in certain areas. I definitely think there are some areas that could use a little bit of improvement, but I think overall, yeah, it came out better than I was hoping, better than I was expecting, I should say. Here I am still trying my darndest to work away on those dang bushes. Oh, yeah. I don't know what happened there, but eventually I do erase all of the red dots or the little fruits, and I think it kind of helped. I think it helped in a way because it's drawing less attention to it. I don't want to draw attention to something that doesn't look the best to the illustration, but yeah, I think overall it came out really well. Going in, trying to find a good brown tone for that cottage in the back. I wanted to give her a little chimney because she's probably in there making her potions, and she needs a cauldron and she needs a fireplace for that cauldron. This is where I start to add the shading that's a little bit purple, and you can kind of see in the pumpkins that it's not looking too great. They're kind of blending in with the background. I didn't really want that. I notice even on really dreary days that are overcast or when it's dark out, pumpkins are still very, very bright, very vibrant. I have a few near my own home right now, and so that's kind of a really nice way to reference that. So I added a couple little details. I gave her a tomato earring and gave her some little standout details, and I think it ended up really nice. And this is going to be the final image. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. This was a lot of fun to do. I really, really enjoyed this, and I think it was a really great growing opportunity for me. So yeah, I'm going to be making videos for all of my DRAWTOBER prompts, so let me know what you guys think and if you guys intend on participating in any of these challenges too. Thanks, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.